My father left me kneeling in the mud of a desolate road, pregnant and shivering under a violent storm. He looked at me with cold eyes and told me I was a shame, a disgrace to the family, simply because the man I loved had vanished after making empty promises. At 15, with nothing but a small bundle of clothes and a broken heart, I thought my life was over. I thought I had no future. But looking back now, with my white hair and a lifetime of memories, I realized that being abandoned on that road was the strange mercy of fate. It was the moment I stopped being a daughter who obeyed and started being a woman who survived. This is the story of how I lost everything to find the family I truly belonged to. If you are listening from anywhere in the world, leave a comment and subscribe, because there are truths that need to be spread, even if they might shake your beliefs. There are stories that, no matter how painful, must be told. I was born in rural Illinois, in a time when things were very different from how they are today. There was no electricity, no modern luxuries, and news took days to reach us, brought by travelers who passed by in wagons along the dirt roads. Our house was small, made of rough-hewn timber and plaster. My father had raised those walls with his own hands, board by board, when he was still a young man and had hope in life. The walls were the color of wet earth, and when it rained hard, you could smell the damp wood, ingrained in everything. The roof was tin, and when the wind blew hard, we heard the creaks and whistles, as if the whole house were talking to the night. We were 8 siblings. 8. I was the oldest of them all, and that changed my life in a way that only those who have lived it can understand. When the last of my brothers was born, I was still almost a child myself, but no one saw me as such. I was the helper, the second mother, the one who had to handle everything when Mama couldn't get out of bed. Mama lived submerged in a sadness so deep that it seemed like a bottomless well. She spent whole days lying down, staring at the ceiling with empty eyes, as if she were somewhere else, far away from there. Today, I know that it had a name. It was depression. But in those times, no one understood these things properly. The neighbors whispered that she was lazy, that her spirit was weak, or that she lacked faith in God. They claimed a real woman wouldn't give in like that she had to be strong for her family. But I saw the truth. I saw a pain in her eyes that wasn't pettiness or a lack of will. It was a heavy thing, bigger than her, that pulled her down as if it were quicksand. I remember sitting by her bed, holding her hand that felt as limp as a dead bird's wing, wondering if sadness was something contagious, like the flu. I was terrified that if I stopped moving, if I stopped scrubbing the floors or feeding the babies, that gray fog would swallow me too. My strength wasn't bravery, my dear. It was a desperate, frantic flight from becoming my mother. I worked until my bones ached because I believed that exhaustion was the only thing that could keep the darkness at bay. And the more we tried to pull her up, the more she sank. Papa didn't help at all. He left early in the morning for the cornfields and returned only when night had fallen completely. And when he returned, he always came with that strong smell of whiskey that stuck to his clothes and his breath. He would throw his old, dirty straw hat into the corner, his eyes red, carrying the hard demeanor of someone who didn't want to talk to anyone. There were nights he arrived okay, grabbed a plate of food, sat at the edge of the table, and ate in silence. Then he went to the hammock that was tied to the porch posts and slept right there, snoring loudly, not caring about anything else. But there were other nights, my daughter, that he came home angry. We knew by the way he opened the gate, by the heavy noise of his boots on the dirt floor. At those times, my heart raced. He entered the house shouting, complaining about everything, breaking whatever he saw in front of him. He cursed Mama because the food was cold, because the house was messy, because the boys were crying. He cursed life, he cursed God, he cursed poverty. And we, the 8 children, stayed huddled in a corner, quiet as mice, praying for the storm to pass quickly. I, even being skinny and small, always put myself in front of my siblings. I think it was on those nights that I learned to be strong, or at least to pretend I was, because inside I was shaking all over, feeling the fear rising up my throat. But I couldn't let my little brothers see. I had to be their wall, even if the wall was made only of bone and courage. Early in the morning, when the rooster crowed and the sun was still shy on the horizon, I was already up. I lit the wood-burning stove, put water to heat, prepared the weak coffee, which we drank with a piece of bread or a handful of grits. I woke the boys, washed their faces with cold water in the tin basin that stayed in the yard. I combed the girls' hair and tied it with ribbons that I made myself from scraps. Then it was laundry to wash. Piles and piles of laundry. Cloth diapers for the babies that I scrubbed with lye soap until my hands were raw. Sheets, towels, my father's work shirt. I hung everything on the makeshift clothesline, made of wire stretched between two trees, and stood watching the clothes swaying with the wind, white against the green of the woods. While I washed, I sang. I always sang. I think it was the only way not to go crazy, you know? I invented melodies, repeated songs I heard on the neighbor's old radio, hummed church hymns, and in the middle of those songs, I dreamed. I dreamed that one day someone would hear me sing and take me away from there. I dreamed of a different life, far from that wooden shack, far from that sadness that seemed to live in the walls. But a poor girl's dream, my dear, often remains just a dream. Reality was hard, rough as the stones on the road, and my reality was taking care of everyone, holding things together, being strong. I had to be the mother that Mama couldn't be. I had to be the father that Papa didn't want to be. I had to be everything, even without being anything yet. It was at that time, in that time of exhaustion and kept dreams, that I met Jacob. And it was there, my daughter, that everything in my life began to change. For better, for worse. Today I know it was simply meant to happen, because every single thing we live through, no matter how painful, has a purpose. Even if we only discover what that purpose is many years later, when the heart has healed and the sight has cleared. But this part of the story of Jacob and everything that came after, I will tell calmly, because every little piece of this memory deserves to be said with care, with respect. After all, it was there that I became who I am. It was there that I lost everything, and it was there that I found myself. So stay with me, my dear. Hold my hand tight while I take you back in time to that girl with dreaming eyes who still believed that life could be different. Because believing is sometimes the only thing that keeps us standing when everything around collapses. Jacob appeared in my life on a common day, one of those that doesn't warn you that it's going to turn the page of destiny. It was mid-afternoon. The sun was already starting to go down, painting the sky that orange color that looked like melted honey. I was in the yard, beating clothes on the large stone that was near the wash tub. My hands were red from scrubbing so much, and I hummed softly a folk song that I had heard at Sunday service. That was when I heard the creaking, that unmistakable sound of a heavy wagon that echoed far away even before we saw who was coming. It was a long groan, kind of sad, that went up and down as if the wood were crying. The axles creaking, the heavy wheels turning slowly, kicking up dust on the dirt path. I stopped what I was doing and looked at the road. It was a large wagon, loaded with firewood, 2 heavy draft horses, spotted, strong and gentle, pulling with that calm that only these animals have. And in command, holding the reins with a firm but delicate way, came a young man I had never seen around there. He was dark-haired, sunburnt, with a slightly worn cowboy hat covering his dark hair. He wore a raw cotton shirt, rolled up to the elbows, and simple trousers patched at the knees. But what really caught my attention, my dear, wasn't the clothes, nor the manner. It was the smile. When he passed in front of the house and looked at me, he smiled, and that smile looked like sunshine, looked like a piece of clear sky in the middle of the storm. I lowered my eyes, kind of awkward, and went back to beating the clothes. I felt my face heat up, and it wasn't because of the sun. No. My heart gave some weird beats, different, as if it had suddenly woken up after sleeping for a long time. A few days later, he passed again, and this time, he stopped. He tied the horses in the shade of a tree and came to the little gate of our house. "Good afternoon," he said, taking off his hat and holding it in his hand with respect. "Could the miss get me a glass of water? The sun is blazing hot today." I stood still, looking at him, kind of silly. I wasn't used to people polite like that, treating us with delicacy. My father was rude, the neighbors were dry, and the few men I knew spoke to us as if we were less, you know? But that young man had something different. He had a soft way, a calm voice, and a look that didn't judge. "Sure, I'll get it right now," I managed to say, kind of stuttering. I ran inside the house, grabbed the tin mug, filled it with fresh water from the ceramic filter, and went back to the gate. When I handed it to him, our hands touched lightly. When a heart is starved for kindness, even the simplest touch can feel like a feast, blinding us to the danger ahead. This innocent spark is the beginning of a love that will destroy her world. But stay with us, because it is also the fire that will eventually forge her steel. It was just a second, but it seemed like the whole world stopped in that instant. He drank all the water at once, thanked me with a smile, and introduced himself. "My name is Jacob. I'm the son of Mr. Thomas, the hauler who lives over by the creek. We haul firewood, supplies, those things. Every now and then, I pass by here." "I am Sophia," I replied, still kind of shy. "I live here with my family." He looked at the house, at the clothesline full of clothes, at the boys peeking through the window with curious little faces. "Big family, by the looks of it," he said with a tone that wasn't criticism, it was almost admiration. "You must have a lot of work." "I do," I said, not knowing exactly what else to say. He stood there for a little while longer, as if he didn't want to leave. We talked about simple things, the weather, the fields, the horses. He told me he dreamed of having his own team of horses one day, that he wanted to work hard to get a piece of land and build a house. He spoke with that sparkle in his eyes of someone who still believes, of someone who hasn't been crushed by life yet. "And you, Sophia? What do you dream of?" he asked, looking at me in that way that seemed to see deeper than people usually see. I was left without an answer. No one had ever asked me that. Dream? I didn't even know if I had the right to dream. My days were so full of obligation that there was no time or space left to think about dreams. I don't know," I spoke softly. "I think I never stopped to think about it." He smiled again, in that gentle way. "Then think, because everyone deserves to dream, Sophia, especially those who work as hard as you." And that was how it began. He started appearing more frequently, always with a different excuse. He would ask for water or inquire if we had eggs to sell. Sometimes he asked for directions to a nearby farm, but I knew, and I think he knew too, that the real reason was different. We started talking more. He told me about the places he passed through, the people he met on his trips, the funny stories that happened on the road. And I, who lived closed up in that house, in that heavy routine, felt as if every conversation with him was a window opening, letting in fresh air that I didn't even know existed. One day, he brought me a little yellow flower he had picked on the way. It was a simple little thing, a wild daisy, but for me it was as if it were the most valuable gift in the world. I kept that flower between the pages of my old Bible, and it stayed there, dry and delicate, for many years. My brothers started to notice. The little ones got excited when they saw the wagon approaching. They ran to the gate, shouting, "It's the woodman! It's the woodman!" And I pretended I didn't care, but inside my heart raced. Mama, in the moments when she was a little better, also noticed. One day she called me into the bedroom and said with that tired voice of hers, "Be careful, my daughter. A man promises a lot of things when he wants something from you, but when times get tough, he disappears like smoke." I shook my head, said everything was fine, that it was just talk. But inside, my dear, I was already falling into that dangerous feeling we call love, but which sometimes is just disguised neediness. Papa never noticed anything. He was always out or drunk, didn't care about anything else. And maybe it was better that way, because if he had noticed earlier, maybe he would have ruined everything right at the beginning. Jacob started looking for me in other places. He also found out that I went to fetch water at the spout at the end of the trail every afternoon, and he started appearing there as if it were a coincidence. We sat in the shade, near the sound of the water running, and talked softly, hidden from the world. He spoke of his plans with so much enthusiasm that I caught myself dreaming along. He said he was going to save dollars, buy some heads of cattle, grow the hauling business, said he was going to build a simple little house, but pretty, with a garden in front and a big wood stove, where I could make the breads and cakes I wanted. "And you're going to be there with me, Sophia?" he said, holding my hand carefully, as if I were made of porcelain. "You won't need to live this life of suffering forever. I'm going to take you out of here, I promise." And I believed. God in heaven, how I believed. Because when we are young, when we are so tired of carrying the world on our back, Any promise of rest looks like paradise. We started meeting secretly behind the little church in the late afternoon, when the sun was already saying goodbye. He arrived first, waited leaning against the brick wall, and when I appeared, his face lit up entirely. We stood there talking, laughing softly, and dreaming out loud. He kissed me for the first time on one of those afternoons. It was a shy, respectful kiss, but one that made me feel things I didn't even know existed. I had just turned 15, but I already felt old from taking care of others so much. And with him, I went back to being a girl. I even went back to believing that life could be light, sweet, full of color. But time, my dear, has a cruel way of passing quickly when we are happy. And those hidden meetings, those stolen kisses, those whispered promises, all of that was building something inside me, a hope so big that I thought I was going to explode with so much joy. Only life, real life, isn't made only of dreams. And sometimes, when we least expect it, reality knocks on the door with a punch so strong it leaves us breathless. And that was exactly what happened to me. Because a few weeks later I realized something was different in my body. It was the nausea that made me suspect first. Early in the morning, when I lit the stove and the smell of smoke mixed with boiling coffee rose, my stomach turned completely inside out. I had to run out to the yard, lean on the fence and stand there breathing deep, trying to hold back that urge that rose up my throat. At first, I thought it was something I had eaten, or maybe a cold, one of those that leaves you nauseous. But the days passed and the nausea continued, and along with it came the tiredness, a different tiredness, deep, that seemed to come from inside the bones. I, who was always strong, who always handled everything, suddenly could barely carry the bundle of clothes to the tub. And then, my dear, came the absence. That absence that every woman knows, that arrives every month and sometimes bothers, but when it doesn't come, brings an even greater fear. I waited a week, then 2, and nothing. My heart started beating differently, no longer with joy, but with panic. I knew what that meant. Even being young, even having no one to explain the things of life to me properly, I knew. The neighbors whispered about girls who got lost, about bellies that grew and shames that stained whole families. And now I was one of them. I spent days without being able to sleep properly. I lay staring at the shingled ceiling, listening to the crickets singing outside and feeling the world collapse on top of me. What was I going to do? How was I going to tell? And Jacob? Would he stay by my side like he promised? I tried to meet with him several times, but he had traveled far away, taking a large load of lumber to a farm on the other side of the ridge. It was going to take a few weeks to return, and, meanwhile, my belly, even still small, was already starting to weigh as if it carried the whole world. It was Chloe, my younger sister, who was already a young lady, who noticed first. She had observant eyes. This girl one day saw me running to the yard in the morning, pale, holding my mouth. When I came back, she was waiting for me with a look that said everything. "Sophia, are you?" She started, but couldn't finish. I nodded, eyes already filling with tears. "Don't say anything to anyone, Chloe, please. I still don't know what to do." She hugged me, and we stayed there, 2 sisters holding each other, while fear squeezed our hearts. But a secret, my dear, is like water. No matter how much we try to hold it, it always ends up leaking through some crack. And that was how Mama found out. I was in the yard, hanging clothes on the line. The afternoon sun beat strong on my back, and I felt that dizziness that had become routine. I held onto the clothesline wire not to fall, closed my eyes and breathed deep. When I opened them, Mama was standing there in the back doorway, looking at me in that way of hers, kind of lost, but at the same time seeing everything. She approached slowly, like someone approaching an injured bird afraid of scaring it. She put her hand on my face, looked me in the eyes, and asked softly, "How long, Sophia?" I didn't need to answer. My crying was answer enough. I collapsed in her arms and, for the first time in a long time, I felt my mother hugging me for real, squeezing me against her chest, like she did when I was little. She cried too. She cried so much she wet my whole hair with tears, and between sobs she repeated, "My girl, my little girl, what are we going to do now?" We stayed there, hugging in the middle of the yard, while the clothes swayed on the line and the chickens scratched around as if nothing was happening. But everything was happening. My world was crumbling, and I didn't know how to hold the pieces. Mama made me sit on the edge of the tub and asked who the father was. When I spoke of Jacob, she shook her head with that sadness of someone who already knew something like this would happen. "Did he promise to marry me, Mom?" I said, still clinging to that fragile hope. "He said he was going to take me out of here, that we were going to have a life together." "Promising is easy, my daughter," she replied with a tired voice. "But keeping it is another story. You need to tell him, and you need to do it soon before your father finds out." The fear I felt multiplied. My father, God in heaven, what was he going to do when he knew? He who was already hard and violent when he drank, how was he going to react knowing that his eldest daughter had lost herself, had brought shame to the family? "Don't tell him yet, Mom. Please," I begged. "Let me talk to Jacob first. Let me resolve this." She agreed. But I saw in her eyes that she knew. She knew there wouldn't be time, that secrets like this don't stay kept for long, especially when they start to appear on people's bellies. I passed the following days in terrible agony. Jacob didn't return, and I felt time slipping through my fingers like sand. I tried to hide the nausea, worked double so no one would suspect, but it was useless. My body was changing, and there was no way to hide from life. It was on a Sunday afternoon after church service that my father found out. Someone had whispered something to him at the general store, some malicious gossip that reached his ears even before reaching mine. He came back home different. He wasn't drunk, and that was exactly what scared me. He was sober, cold, and his silence was more terrifying than any scream. He called me outside and I went trembling. I went outside with my legs wobbling, feeling every step as if it were the last. My father was standing near the fence, back to me, looking at the road. He had his hands in the pockets of his old trousers and his shoulders tense. The silence was so heavy that even the birds seemed to have stopped singing. I stood there, waiting for him to speak, waiting for him to scream, waiting for anything. But he didn't turn around, just stayed there quiet. And that silence hurt more than any slap. After a time that seemed like an eternity, he finally spoke. The voice came out low, controlled, but loaded with something that froze me inside. "Is it true what they are saying around?" I swallowed hard. My mouth was dry, my throat tight. "Dad, is it true or not?" he repeated, still without turning. "It is," I managed to say in a thread of a voice. He stayed still for a few more seconds. I saw his shoulders rise and fall as if he were breathing deep, trying to control himself. Then he turned, and when our eyes met, my dear, I saw something I had never seen before in his look. It wasn't anger. It was shame. Shame of me. "Do you know what you did to this family?" he asked, voice starting to rise. "Do you know the shame that is going to fall on us? Everyone is already talking. Everyone is already laughing at me, saying I didn't know how to raise my daughter right. Dad, I'm sorry. Sorry." He gave a bitter laugh, without any humor. "Sorry doesn't fix a swollen belly, girl. Sorry doesn't erase the shame. Who is the bastard? It's Jacob, the son of Mr. Thomas, the hauler." I spoke fast. "But he is a good man, Dad. He said he is going to marry me, that he is going to take responsibility for everything." Said. He spat the word as if it were poison. Said. Where? When? Where is he now to say this to my face? He traveled, went to make a haul far away, but when he returns, nothing, Sophia. He exploded, taking a step in my direction. I recoiled instinctively. These men are all the same. They promise, but when things get tight, they vanish like smoke. And you, dumb as a post, believed. The tears ran down my face without control. I wanted to defend Jacob, wanted to believe he was different, but my father's words entered like splinters in my heart. What if he was right? What if Jacob never came back? What if I was left alone with that growing belly and the increasing shame? Dad, please, give me a chance. Chance? He let out a bitter, dry laugh. You already had your chance, and you threw it in the trash. Now you'll have to deal with it. He looked at me harshly, his jaw tense, and then spat on the ground. I don't want you inside the house. You're going to dirty your sister's names. How are they going to find a decent husband if everyone knows their oldest sister is a loose woman? I felt the world spin. My legs weakened. Dad, I have nowhere to go. Your problem, he replied coldly. You got yourself into this alone. Now handle it alone. Mama appeared at the back door, holding onto the frame. She was pale, with eyes red from crying so much. Frank, she is our daughter, she said, voice weak, but trying to be firm. You can't throw the girl in the street like this. Shut your mouth, woman, he shouted, turning to her. It was you who raised her poorly like this, letting her do what she wants. Now deal with it. Mama shrank back but didn't leave. You know, looking back now, I don't blame her. In those days, depression was like an invisible cage that trapped a soul. She loved me, truly. But her wings had been broken by this harsh life. She could only stand there, loving me in a silent, paralyzed helplessness. And that, my dear, that gave me a strength I didn't know I had. Seeing my mother, so fragile, so broken, still trying to defend me, made me realize I couldn't crumble, not completely. Okay, Dad, I said, wiping the tears with the back of my hand. I'm leaving, but you will see. Jacob is coming back and we are going to get married and you will see that I am not what you are thinking. He looked at me with contempt. You have until tomorrow morning to pack your things and disappear from here. It is heartbreaking to witness a father choose his own pride over his daughter's safety. Yet this betrayal is exactly what pushes Sophia toward her true destiny. But before she finds her strength, she has to face the darkest night of her life. And trust me, it gets much worse before it gets better. And he turned his back, going inside the house with heavy steps. I heard him grab the bottle of moonshine he hid behind the sack of corn and the sound of the liquid being poured into the mug. Mama came to me, hugged me tight. Forgive him, my daughter. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's angry, but it will pass. It won't pass, Mom. I spoke, still feeling the salty taste of tears. And maybe he's right. Maybe I ruined everything, really. Don't talk like that. She held my face with both hands, forcing me to look at her. You made a mistake. It's true. But a mistake doesn't define who we are. You are a good girl, Sophia. You always were. And you will continue being with a belly or without a belly. Chloe appeared along with my other younger brothers. Everyone was crying, scared by the screams. I hugged each of them, trying to record that moment, those little faces, that smell of childhood. Take care of them for me, Chloe, I asked my sister. Take care of Mom too. You're not going away for real, are you? She asked, clinging to my arm. I'll have to go, sister. But it's not forever. When everything works out, I'll come back, I promise. One more promise, one more fragile hope thrown in the wind. I spent that night awake, packing my few things in an old bundle. 2 changes of clothes, a comb, the Bible I had received at confirmation, and the dry little flower Jacob had given me. It was everything I had in the world. At dawn, before the rooster crowed, I heard the bedroom door creak. It was my father. He was sober again and had that determined look that made me feel a shiver down my spine. Pack your things, he said. You are leaving here now. But it's still dark, Dad. Now, Sophia. And that was how the day began that would change my life forever. I grabbed my bundle with trembling hands. The sky was still dark, that deep darkness before dawn clears. Only the distant crowing of some confused rooster was heard, and the wind hitting the tree leaves. There was a smell of wet earth in the air, the kind that warns rain is coming. Mama was at the door, holding a piece of bread wrapped in a cloth. She handed it to me without saying anything, just looked at me with those wet eyes that said everything the mouth couldn't. I hugged her fast, tight, like someone clinging to the last plank before sinking. I felt her thin body trembling in my arms. Go with God, my daughter, she whispered in my ear. He never abandons anyone, even when everyone abandons. I wanted to answer, wanted to say something, but the words got stuck in my throat, suffocated by the crying I was trying to hold back. I could only nod my head and walk away before my heart broke into pieces right there. My father was already in the wagon, holding the reins of the old horse we used for hauling. He didn't look at me when I climbed up, didn't say anything, just clicked his tongue, and the horse started walking slowly, heavy, pulling that old wagon that creaked at every pothole in the road. I sat in the back on the rough wooden bed, hugging my bundle. The sky began to lighten a little, but it was a gray brightness, lifeless. Heavy clouds covered everything, low, dark, threatening. And then, as if the sky wanted to cry along with me, thick drops began to fall. At first it was just sparse splashes hitting my head, my shoulders, but soon it turned into a deluge. The rain fell with force, in that violent way only rural rains know how to be. It soaked my clothes in a matter of minutes. My hair stuck to my face, water running down my eyes, mixed with the tears I couldn't hold back anymore. The road turned to mud. The wheels of the wagon sank and squelched, and the horse had to exert force to pull. I saw my father's back, rigid, wet, but he didn't turn around, didn't ask if I was okay, didn't offer the waxed canvas he had thrown over his shoulders. Nothing. It was as if I no longer existed to him. We rode for a time that seemed eternal. I didn't know where we were going. I only knew we were moving further and further away from home, further and further from the only life I knew. The rain continued falling, soaking everything, and I felt the cold entering my bones. I started to shiver. But it wasn't just from cold, it was from fear. A fear that came from so deep it seemed to have no end. Suddenly, without any warning, the wagon stopped. We were in the middle of the road, surrounded by woods on both sides, with no house in sight. Just the rain, the mud, and the gray of everything. My father turned for the first time since we left home. He looked at me with that empty look, without emotion, as if he were looking at a sack of feed he needed to unload. "Get down," he said. I stood still, not understanding, or maybe understanding very well, but not wanting to believe. "Dad?" My voice came out weak, almost inaudible because of the rain. "Get down, Sophia," he repeated harder. "Deal with your shame. I don't want to see your face anymore. Dad, for the love of God, there's nothing here, there's no one. Your problem." He cut me off. "Should have thought about that before. Now get down before I throw you off this wagon." I looked around, desperate. It was just woods, mud road, rain. There was no house, no people, no nothing. It was the middle of nowhere, and he was going to leave me there alone, pregnant, under that storm. "Dad, please." I tried one more time, my voice breaking. He turned his face away. In that simple gesture, that refusal to look at me, I understood I had lost him, not to alcohol, and not to anger. I had lost him to shame. Hate is a feeling, fiery and alive. But shame? Shame is cold. It is the desire to erase, to pretend that something simply does not exist. And in that moment, to him, I did not exist. I got down from the wagon with wobbly legs. The mud stuck to my old sandals, rose up my bare feet. I hugged my bundle against my chest, as if that pile of rags could protect me from something. Barely had I put my feet on the ground, my father was already turning the wagon. Didn't even wait for me to move away properly. He clicked his tongue again, and the horse started walking, going back the same way we had come. I stood there, watching the wagon move away, watching my father leaving, watching everything I knew disappear in the curve of the road, swallowed by the rain and the mist that was starting to rise. Perhaps you are wondering, how could a father be so cruel to his own flesh and blood? But oh my dear, a man's pride is sometimes a potent poison. In that moment, he no longer saw his little girl. He saw only a stain on his honor that had to be scrubbed away, even if the price was his own child. And then, I fell apart. I fell to my knees in the mud, hugged my belly that was barely starting to grow, and cried. I cried like I had never cried in my life. I cried for the girl I was and who had ended there on that road. I cried for the baby that was inside me and hadn't asked to come into the world that way. I cried for Jacob, who promised and vanished. I cried for my mother, who couldn't defend me. I cried for everything. The rain fell with such force it hurt my skin. My clothes were soaked, heavy, stuck to my body. I was so cold my teeth were chattering. But worse than the cold of the body was the cold I felt inside, in my chest, as if my heart had turned to ice. I screamed. I didn't just cry. I howled at the gray sky, a raw, animal sound that tore my throat. It was the sound of my childhood breaking. If any of you listening right now feel like you are plummeting into an abyss just as I was, please remember this. Sometimes when you think you are being buried, you are actually being planted. That mud was not my grave. It was the soil for my rebirth. In those agonizing minutes, kneeling in the sludge, I felt a terrifying hollowness open up in my chest. I waited for death. I honestly wanted it. I closed my eyes and bargained with God. Take me. If I am such a sin, take me now. But God, in his mysterious silence, didn't send lightning. He sent a wagon. And in that silence, I learned that sometimes rock bottom is the only foundation solid enough to build a new life on. That was when I heard a different noise through the sound of rain, a noise of wheels creaking, of horseshoes hitting wet ground. I raised my head with hair stuck to my face, eyes burning from crying so much. A wagon was coming, but it wasn't my father's returning. It was different, larger, covered with a canvas and pulled by 2 strong horses coming slowly, carefully in the mud. I stood there, not knowing what to do. Part of me wanted to run, hide in the woods, because shame is a thing that makes us want to disappear. But my feet didn't obey. I stood planted in the ground, soaked, shivering, waiting. The wagon stopped near me, and then a lady got down. She was short, chubby, with a dark shawl covering her head. Despite the rain, she came to me without rushing, without fear of getting wet. When she got close, she looked me in the eyes. And do you know what I saw in that look, my dear? I saw what I hadn't seen in the eyes of my own father. I saw compassion. I saw humanity. I saw love. My daughter, she said with that soft voice that felt like a hug. What are you doing here alone in this rain? I tried to answer, but couldn't. I just managed to cry more. And she, without asking anything else, took the shawl off her back and put it around me. It was warm, smelling of lavender soap and home. The contrast between the cold mud and the warmth of Sarah's kindness marks the true turning point of Sophia's life. This simple act of compassion is the seed for everything she will build later. But the road ahead still holds challenges she never expected. Home. Come, my child, she said, pulling me gently by the arm. Come with us. No one deserves to be alone in this storm. And that was how, my dear, I met Sarah, the woman who stopped the wagon, the woman who saved me when I thought I had no more salvation. Sarah helped me climb into the wagon. My legs barely supported me, and she held my arm firmly, as if she knew I was going to collapse at any moment. Up there, sitting at the reins, was a gentleman with gray hair, sunburnt face, and kind eyes. He looked at me and nodded, respectful, without asking questions. This is my husband, Joseph, Sarah said, settling me under the canvas that protected the wagon bed. And you, my child, what is your name? Sophia, I managed to say, voice still trembling. Sophia, she repeated, as if keeping my name with affection. What a beautiful name. Now stop crying, my child. You are safe with us. She wrapped me with another blanket that was there, an old blanket, but clean, smelling of lavender. She sat next to me and held my hand. Her hand was rough, calloused from work, but warm and firm. And that simple touch, that gesture of holding my hand, was as if someone had lit a candle in the middle of darkness. Mr. Joseph clicked, and the horses started walking. The rain continued falling, but there under the canvas, protected, wrapped in those blankets, I felt a little bit less lost. Just a little bit, because the pain was still there, heavy in the chest, but I wasn't so alone inside it anymore. During the way, Sarah asked no questions. She just stayed there by my side, occasionally squeezing my hand, murmuring soft words that sounded more like prayers. And I, exhausted from crying so much, from suffering so much, ended up leaning my head on her shoulder and closing my eyes. When I woke up, the wagon had stopped. The rain had calmed down, turning into just a fine drizzle. I looked around and saw we were in front of a small, simple house made of wood, with a porch in front and a garden that, even with the rain, you could see was well cared for. There were pink flowers in the beds and a large apple tree next to the house, branches heavy with fruit. We arrived home, Sarah said, smiling at me. Come, come, let's get you dry and warm. She helped me down, and Mr. Joseph grabbed my soaked bundle. The 3 of us entered the house, and as soon as I stepped inside, I smelled that scent that to this day moves me when I remember. Smell of lavender soap, of clean clothes, of wood burning in the stove, smell of home, of peace. The house was small, but tidy. There was a living room with a wooden table, some simple chairs, a sideboard with some china plates. On the wall, a crucifix and an image of Our Lady. Everything very simple, but clean, cared for with love. "First, let's get those wet clothes off you," Sarah said, taking me to a small room in the back. "Then you take a warm bath, eat properly, and then we talk." She gave me clothes of hers that were loose on me because I was much thinner. It was a flowered cotton dress, kind of faded, but fragrant and dry. What a relief to take off those soaked, cold clothes and put something warm on the body. I took a bath in a basin with warm water she heated on the stove. I washed my hair, removed all that mud, that dirt from the road. It was as if I were washing away a little of the pain too, a little of that horrible morning. When I came out, Sarah had prepared food, a plate of stew with potatoes, a piece of cornbread, and some cinnamon sugar donuts, still warm that she had made while I got ready. The smell of those sweet little cakes with cinnamon on top filled the whole kitchen. Pause for a moment and imagine that scent with me, the warmth of cinnamon and the smell of safety. After the freezing rain of rejection, that simple aroma was God's first promise that He had not forsaken me. It was the very scent of grace. "Sit here and eat, my child," she said, pulling out a chair for me. "You need to eat." I sat and looked at that plate. It had been a long time since anyone placed food in front of me like that, with care, with affection. Back home, I was always the last to eat after serving everyone, and often so little was left that I went to sleep hungry. I ate slowly, tasting every forkful, and while I ate, the tears started falling again. But they were different tears. They were no longer just of pain, they were of relief too, of gratitude for those two people who didn't even know me and were treating me with such kindness. Mr. Joseph entered the kitchen, had already changed clothes too, and sat at the other end of the table. He lit a rolled cigarette and stood looking out the window, at the yard where the drizzle fell gently. "The girl can stay here as long as she needs," he said, without looking at me, speaking more to Sarah. But I knew it was for me to hear too. House is small, but there's always room for one more. And no one deserves to stay out in the open, especially in this state. That was when I realized he had seen my belly, still small, but already starting to show. And even so, he was opening the doors of his house to me, without judging, without asking, just welcoming. Sarah came to me and caressed my still damp hair. "Will you stay here with us?" "Yes. And when you are ready, if you want to tell what happened, we will listen. But if you don't want to, that's fine too. Everyone has their pains, and sometimes pain needs time to turn into words." I spent the first days in that house in a kind of airy state, as if it wasn't real. I woke up in the morning and for a few seconds forgot where I was. I thought I was going to see my brothers sleeping beside me, was going to hear my father grumbling. But then I opened my eyes and saw that small, clean room, the window with calico curtains, the smell of bread baking coming from the kitchen. Sarah treated me like a daughter, taught me to make bread, to sew, to tend the garden, worked with me side by side, talking about simple things, the chickens, the weather, the crops, never charged me anything, never made me feel like a burden. Mr. Joseph was quieter, but in a good way. Now and then he brought something from the fields, some ears of green corn, a watermelon, or a bushel of apples. He left it on the kitchen table and left without waiting for thanks. But the affection was there, in that silent gesture. Some nights I woke up crying. I dreamed of my father leaving me on the road, with the rain, with the cold. I dreamed of Jacob appearing and rejecting me. I dreamed of my baby being born and no one wanting to hold it. And Sarah heard me. She came to my room, sat on the edge of the bed, held my hand, and hummed softly until I calmed down. "It will pass, my child," she said. "Everything in this life passes. Pain passes too." I wanted to believe, but the pain seemed so big, so deep, that I couldn't imagine it passing. It was as if it had taken root inside me, intertwined with the child growing in my belly. One afternoon, sitting on the porch shucking corn, Sarah finally asked, "And the father of the child, Sophia? Does he know?" I shook my head, tears already starting to fall again. "He traveled before I could tell. He said he would come back, that he would marry me. But it's been a long time and he hasn't returned." She stayed quiet for a moment, hands working on the corn, expression thoughtful. Men are sometimes cowards, my daughter. They promise heaven and earth when they want something, but in times of trouble they disappear. But you know what? You don't need a man to be strong. You are already strong. Look at everything you've already been through, and you're still here standing, breathing, taking care of this child that is coming. But how am I going to raise a child alone? I asked, voice full of despair. I have nothing. I have no one. You have us, she said firmly. And you have yourself, which is much more than you imagine. Sarah isn't just offering comfort here. She is rewriting Sophia's entire definition of family, proving that true bond is built on presence, not just blood. This is the moment Sophia begins to realize that her worth was never tied to the man who left, but to the strength she is about to discover within herself. And that was how, my dear, little by little, day after day, I started putting the pieces together. It was there in that small house, with that couple who welcomed me without knowing me, that I started to learn that we can be born again. Even when everything seems lost, even when we are abandoned in the middle of the road under rain, it is still possible to start over. It is still possible to be happy. The months passed, and my belly kept growing. Every day I woke up and looked at my changing body, felt a mixture of things I can't even explain properly. There was love, yes, because that baby was mine, was part of me. But there was fear too. Fear of not coping. Fear of raising alone. Fear of what would come after. Sarah took care of me with a zeal I had never received. Made mint teas when I was nauseous. Prepared light foods when my stomach turned. Massaged my back when it hurt from carrying the weight of the belly. And in the hardest moments, when longing for home squeezed and tears came without warning, she simply sat beside me and held my hand. But there was an anguish that didn't pass, that grew along with the child inside me. It was the absence of Jacob. Where was he? Why hadn't he returned? Did he not even know I was there, lost waiting for him? Or did he know and had run away on purpose? I tried not to think about these things, but at night, when I was lying staring at the ceiling, thoughts came like a swarm of bees, buzzing in my head non-stop, and the more I thought, the more it hurt. One day I was in the garden with Sarah, picking lettuce, when I saw a wagon passing on the road. My heart raced. I dropped the basket and ran to the fence, as fast as I could with that heavy belly. But when the wagon passed close, I saw it wasn't him. It was another older driver, who didn't even look in our direction. I went back to the garden with wobbly legs and eyes full of water. Sarah saw me and said nothing, just hugged me, letting me cry on her shoulder until there were no more tears. "He's not coming back, is he?" I managed to ask between sobs. "I don't know, my daughter," she replied with that gentle honesty of hers. "But what I know is that you can't keep depending on this to live. This baby needs you whole, not a broken mother waiting for someone who might never arrive." The words hurt, but they were true. And the truth, my dear, sometimes hurts more than a lie, but it is the truth that heals. I started dedicating myself more to household chores. I learned to sew better, making tiny clothes for the baby that was coming. I embroidered with care, putting flowers and birds on the white cloths. Every stitch I made was like a prayer, asking God to give me strength to face what was coming. Mr. Joseph, who was always a man of few words, started fixing up a corner in the little room where I slept. He took some old crates, sanded, painted, and made a makeshift crib. It wasn't anything luxurious, but it was made with care, with affection. And when it was ready, he said nothing. Just put it there in the corner and left, lighting his rolled cigarette on the porch. But I saw the kindness of that man who welcomed me without knowing me, who never made me feel like a burden, who was there silent but present, building a place for my child in the world. Some neighbors started appearing. In the country, my dear, news travels fast. Soon, everyone knew there was a pregnant girl living with Sarah and Mr. Joseph. And where there are people, there is judgment. Some came with faces of pity, others with faces of malicious curiosity, asked where the father of the child was, why I had been abandoned by the family, if I regretted what I had done. The questions came disguised as concern, but judgment was there, hidden between the lines. Sarah let no one disrespect me. When any neighbor crossed the line, she cut them off immediately. Sophia is under my roof and deserves respect. Whoever doesn't have respect can leave. And they left with their sharp tongues kept in their mouths, but looks still full of poison. There was an afternoon I heard two women whispering near the fence. They thought I wasn't watching, but I was hidden behind the kitchen window. Poor Sarah, having to carry this shame of others, one of them said. Yeah, the girl got lost and now is there, being a burden to others, the other replied. Those words entered like a knife. I was a burden. I was a shame. I was causing trouble for the only people who had welcomed me. I ran to the bedroom and cried, hidden, biting the pillow not to make noise. But Sarah had attentive ears. She entered the room, sat on the bed, and pulled me into her hug. Don't pay attention to what those women say, my daughter. People who have nothing to do go looking for faults in others' lives. You are no burden at all. You are a blessing. God put you in our path for a reason. But I'm giving so much work for you guys. Work? She gave a soft chuckle. My daughter, this house was empty for so long. Joseph and I could never have children. The house was clean, tidy, but empty. You brought life inside here. You brought joy, and this child coming is going to fill this place with laughter. That's not work. That's a gift. I cried even more, but this time it was from gratitude. Gratitude for having found those people, for not being alone, for having been welcomed when everyone threw me away. The days passed, and the belly kept growing even more. It was already heavy, moved a lot, kicked my ribs at dawn. I talked to her softly, put my hand, and felt the little movements, imagining what that little face would be like, if it would be a boy or a girl. There were nights I dreamed of Jacob, dreamed he appeared, asked for forgiveness, hugged me, and said he had never forgotten me. I woke up with a tight heart, because it was just a dream. The reality was that he had vanished, and I was there alone, with a huge belly and an uncertain future. But little by little, my dear, I began to understand one thing. I didn't need him to be complete. I was already complete. Me, my baby, and that couple God put in my path. And it was this certainty that made me move forward. The pain started at dawn, in that way that gives no warning or time to prepare. I woke up with a sharp pang in my belly, a cramp different from anything I had ever felt. I sat on the bed, kind of dizzy, trying to understand what was happening, and then came another stronger pang that made me double over. Sarah, I called, voice coming out weak at first. Then I screamed louder. Sarah! She came running, still in her nightgown, loose gray hair falling on her shoulders. A candle in hand illuminated her worried face. Is it time, my child? She asked, already coming close, touching my forehead. I nodded, scared. The contractions came closer and closer, stronger and stronger. I felt as if my body was splitting in half. Sarah went out shouting for her husband. Joseph! Joseph! Wake up! Go get Mrs. Nancy fast. The girl is having the baby. I heard Mr. Joseph moving in their room, the noise of boots being put on in a hurry, the door opening, and then the gallop of the horse disappearing into the darkness of dawn. Sarah came back to my side, helped me lie down again, put pillows under my back. Breathe deep, my daughter. Breathe deep and let go slowly. The pain comes, but passes, comes and passes. I tried to do as she commanded, but the pain was so big it seemed to occupy all the space inside me. I grabbed her hand with force, sweating, trembling. I'm scared, I managed to say between one contraction and another. I know, my daughter, I know, but you are strong, stronger than you imagine, and I am here. I won't leave your side, not for a second. I don't know how much time passed until Mr. Joseph returned with Mrs. Nancy, the midwife of the region. She was a very old lady, thin, with bony but firm hands. She entered the room, carrying a bag with clean cloths, scissors, string. Good morning, my young lady, she said with that calm of someone who had already brought hundreds of children into the world. Let's see how this baby is. She examined me, touched my belly, calculated. It will still take a while, but everything is going well. You just need to have patience and let the body work. Patience? How to have patience when pain came in waves bigger and bigger? But I had no choice. I could only endure, breathe, cry, squeeze Sarah's hand until it turned purple. The sun began to rise outside. The weak light entered through the window, and I heard the roosters crowing. the birds waking up, life going on normal, while inside there I thought I was going to die of pain. "I can't take it anymore," I cried at some point. "I can't take it." "Yes, you can, Missus," Nancy said firmly. "Every woman thinks she can't take it, but she can. You are stronger than you think. Now push when I say, heard?" And then, after hours that seemed like years, after so much sweat and tears and pain, came the moment. Mrs. Nancy ordered to push, and I did with everything I had inside me. I screamed, cried, begged God to help me, and suddenly, in a magic second, the pain stopped. And in its place came a cry, a thin, high-pitched cry, the most beautiful cry I ever heard in my life. "It's a girl, Mrs." Nancy announced, lifting that tiny little being, red, all wet and perfect. "A beautiful and healthy girl," Sarah cried, laughing at the same time. She wiped the baby's little face with a soft cloth, wrapped her in a little blanket I had made myself, and put her in my arms. And when I looked at that tiny little face, at those closed little eyes, at that little mouth, already searching for the breast, my dear, I understood. I understood that everything I went through, all the pain, all the abandonment, all the shame had been worth it. Because there in my arms was the most perfect miracle God could have given me. "Charlotte," I whispered, kissing her forehead. "You are going to be named Charlotte." Sarah smiled with eyes shining with tears. What a beautiful name, a princess name. I held my daughter against my chest and felt a love so big I didn't even know existed. In this moment of raw pain and overwhelming love, the frightened girl finally dies, and a fierce mother is born. Watch closely how Joseph reacts next. It's a quiet gesture that proves family isn't defined by blood, but by who stays when things get tough. A love that didn't fit inside the body, that overflowed on all sides. And along with this love came a new strength, a certainty that I would handle it, that I would protect that child from everything and everyone. Mr. Joseph appeared at the door, shy, hat in hand. "Can I see?" he asked softly. "Yes, you can," I answered, smiling, even being exhausted. He approached slowly, looked at Charlotte with that clumsy way of a man who doesn't know how to deal with a baby. But I saw the smile in the corner of his mouth and saw something wet shining in his eyes. "She's tiny," he said, "but seems strong." "She will be strong," I said, "for sure. She will be the strongest girl in the world." The following days were of adaptation. Charlotte nursed all the time, cried at dawn, left me sleepless, but every cry of hers was music. Every time she grabbed my finger with that tiny hand, my heart melted. Sarah taught me to take care of her, to change diapers, to bathe, to calm down when she cried. And gradually I got the hang of it. I became a real mother. There was a night I woke up and saw Sarah standing next to the crib, looking at Charlotte sleeping. She didn't know I was awake, and I saw a tear roll down her face, silent. I got up and went to her. "Sarah," she turned, wiped her face quickly. "Sorry, my daughter. I was just watching her sleep. She is so beautiful. Are you crying?" I spoke softly. She smiled, but it was a sad smile. "It's just that I always wanted to have a baby like this, you know? But God didn't want to give me one. And now He gave me one in another way. Through you." I hugged her, the two of us standing there in the dark, looking at that child who had changed everything. "Is she yours too?" I whispered. "She is ours." And it was true, my dear. In that moment, the heavy burden of being a disgrace began to lift, replaced by the weight of a sleeping baby and the warmth of a shared family. We weren't bound by blood, but by something stronger, choice. Charlotte wasn't just my daughter. She was the daughter of that home, of that love, of that family that life had formed in a different but perfect way. Charlotte was a few months old when I started feeling I needed to do something more. Don't misunderstand me, my dear. Taking care of my daughter was everything to me. It was what gave meaning to my days. But there was a restlessness inside me, a desire to show that I wasn't just a burden, that I could contribute, that I could be useful. Sarah had taught me a lot about sewing. We spent afternoons sitting on the porch, her with her old machine, me with needle and thread in hand, while Charlotte slept in the crib beside us. I already knew how to make hems, sew buttons, patch tiers, but I wanted to learn more. I wanted to learn to make real clothes. Sarah, I said one of those afternoons while embroidering a diaper. Do you think I can learn to make dresses? She looked up from the fabric she was sewing and looked at me in that affectionate way of hers. Of course you can, my daughter. You have skilled hands, and, more importantly, you have the will to learn. When we have the will, we learn anything. And so it began. She taught me to take measurements, to cut fabrics following a pattern, to make seams stay straight and firm. At first, I made many mistakes. Cut crooked, sleeves came out different sizes, the neckline came out weird, but I didn't give up. I undid everything and started again. Perfection comes with practice, Sarah always said. No one is born knowing. We go learning, erring, getting up, trying again. I made my first complete dress using a scrap of flowered fabric Sarah had kept. It was simple, without many embellishments, but when I finished and put it on, I felt a pride so big it seemed I was going to explode. I had done that with my own hands. I was capable. It looks beautiful on you, Sarah said with eyes shining with pride. You have talent, Sophia. Real talent. I started making clothes for Charlotte, tiny little dresses with ruffles and bows. Every piece that was ready was a victory, and seeing my daughter wearing what I had made filled me with a different joy. A joy that came from inside, knowing that I was building something. It was Mr. Joseph who had the idea. Sophia, he said one night after dinner, you sew well. The neighbors keep commenting on the pretty clothes Charlotte wears. Why don't you offer to make clothes for people? You can charge a little something, so you save your money. The idea scared and excited me at the same time. Would anyone want me, a single girl with a daughter, to sew for them? Would they trust my work? But I don't know if. Yes, Sarah cut in firmly. And even if people judge you for other things, when they see the well-done work, they will want it again. Quality speaks louder than gossip. The hardest test wasn't the sewing, it was Sunday service. The first time I walked back into the village church with Charlotte in my arms, the silence was so loud it hurt my ears. Heads turned. I saw the elbows nudging, the fans covering mouths, whispering the word, bastard. My knees knocked together, and every instinct screamed at me to run. But then I felt Sarah's hand on my shoulder, heavy and warm, and I looked down at my daughter's innocent face. I lifted my chin. I walked down that aisle not with the head-down shame of a sinner, but with the fierce, protective stride of a mother. That was the day I learned that your dignity isn't something people give you. It's something you refuse to let them take. Facing the judgment of a small town takes more courage than facing a storm. And this is the moment Sophia reclaims her dignity from those who tried to steal it. But earning respect is a long journey, and her next step toward independence is truly inspiring to watch. The following Sunday, after church, Sarah commented to some acquaintances that I was sewing to order. The first to order was Mrs. Barbara, a widow lady who lived near the church. I need a dress for my grandson's party, she said. Nothing too elaborate, but pretty. Can you do it? My heart raced. It was my first real client. Yes, I can, Mrs. Barbara. I will make it with great care. I worked on that dress as if it were the most important in the world. I chose a moss-green cotton fabric. I made a simple but elegant model. I put care into every detail. I spent nights awake, sewing by oil lamplight while Charlotte slept, wanting it to be perfect. When I took the finished dress to Mrs. Barbara, she put it on and looked in the small mirror she had in her living room. I saw the smile opening on her face. It's perfect, girl, perfect! You have hands of gold. She paid me, and when I took those coins and bills in my hand, my dear, I felt something I had never felt before. It was my money. Money I had earned with my own work, with my own talent. It wasn't charity. It wasn't a favor. It was an achievement. I ran home and showed Sarah. Look how much she paid me. Sarah laughed, happy with my joy. I knew, my daughter, I knew you would succeed. Orders started arriving slowly at first, but increased. A neighbor wanted a dress for a wedding. Another needed some simple blouses. A third ordered christening clothes for a grandson. And I did everything with dedication, with love, wanting every piece to come out better than the previous one. With the money I earned, I started buying my own things. Fabric, thread, needles, and what was left I kept in a tin can I hid under the bed. That money was my security, my independence. It was proof that I could support myself. Charlotte grew healthy, full of life. She already sat alone, laughed when I made jokes, stretched her little arms wanting lap, and I worked with her on my lap, sewing with one hand, holding her with the other. It was hard, it was tiring, but it was mine. It was our life built with effort and love. The same neighbors who judged me before now came looking for me to make their clothes, and I served them all with politeness, without holding a grudge, because I had learned that the best answer to judgment is well done work, is lifting the head and moving forward. There was a day I was sewing a wedding dress. Yes, my dear, a bride ordered her dress from me. While I worked on that white fabric, on those delicate embroideries, I thought about myself. I thought about Jacob, about the promises he had made, about the wedding that never happened. And do you know what I felt? Nothing. Neither anger, nor sadness, nor longing, just a peace. A certainty that my life had taken the right course, even if it was different from what I had dreamed. Because sometimes, my dear, dreams that don't come true make space for even better realities. Charlotte was already bigger, running around the yard with the energy of a 3-year-old when I felt I needed to go back. Go back to see how my brothers were, to see how Mama was. Time had passed. The wound had healed a little, and I needed to close that circle. I needed to be sure that I had truly forgiven. Sarah, I spoke one morning while she helped me hang clothes. I think I need to go there. I need to see my mother. She stopped what she was doing and looked at me with that wise way of hers. Are you sure? You don't need to rush, my daughter. Some wounds need more time. I know, but it's not for them. It's for me. I need to look at that house again. Need to see that I survived, that I am okay. Need to show my mother that she doesn't need to carry that guilt anymore. Sarah nodded, understanding. Then go and take Charlotte. Let your mother meet her granddaughter. I prepared everything with care. I wore my prettiest dress, that flowered fabric one I had made myself. Dressed Charlotte in a little white outfit I had hand embroidered. I wanted them to see that I was okay, that I hadn't ruined myself as they probably imagined. Mr. Joseph took me by wagon. It was a silent trip, just the noise of wheels on dirt ground and birds singing. The closer we got, the tighter my heart squeezed. So many memories of that road, of that last time I had passed there, soaked, abandoned, afraid. When I spotted the house, that shack I knew so well, I felt a knot in my throat. It seemed smaller than I remembered, more worn. Time hadn't been kind to it. Mr. Joseph stopped the wagon in front of the gate. Some chickens scratched around the yard, and inside I heard voices of children playing. My brothers. My God, how they must have grown. Want me to go with you? Mr. Joseph asked. No need, I can handle it. Can you wait here? He nodded, lit his rolled cigarette, and stayed there respecting my moment. I got down from the wagon, holding Charlotte in my arms. She was curious, looking at everything with those big, bright eyes. I opened the little gate that creaked the same way as before and entered the yard. It was Chloe who saw me first. She was hanging clothes. Already a young lady, hair tied in a ponytail. When she looked at me, she froze for a few seconds, as if seeing a ghost. Sophia? She whispered, dropping the sheet she was holding. Hi, Chloe, I replied with a choked voice. She ran to me and hugged me with so much force she almost knocked me over. She cried uncontrolled, squeezing my arm, touching my face as if she needed to be sure I was real. You came back, she repeated between sobs. The other brothers appeared, one by one, coming out of the house, curious about the commotion. Some I barely recognized. They had grown so much, but they recognized my face and everyone came to hug me, celebrate, ask a bunch of things at the same time. Who is this baby? Is she your daughter? What is her name? Where were you? Why did you take so long? I laughed and cried at the same time, trying to answer everything, feeling that sibling love that time doesn't erase. This is Charlotte, I introduced, showing my daughter who looked at everyone with a scared face. And I was living not very far from here, with some very good people who welcomed me. That was when I heard her voice. Sophia. I looked at the house door. It was Mama. She was thinner, more bent over, hair grayer, but it was her, my mother. She came to me slowly, as if afraid I would vanish if she walked too fast. Stopped in front of me and stood looking at me, eyes filling with water. "My daughter," she whispered. "My little daughter. Hi, Mom." She touched my face with trembling hands, ran her fingers through my hair, looked at Charlotte in my lap, and then collapsed, crying, pulling me into a tight hug. "Forgive me, my daughter. Forgive me for not defending you properly, for not stopping your father. Forgive me." "I already forgave, Mom." I spoke crying. "Also forgave a long time ago." We stood there hugging, mother and daughter, closing old wounds with new tears. Going back to the place that broke you is never easy, but Sophia shows us that forgiveness is a gift you give yourself, not the people who hurt you. With this chapter closed, there is only one ghost from her past left to face, and his return will test everything she has built. We went inside the house. Everything was the same, but at the same time, different. The table was the same, the stove, the wood was the same, but something was missing. He was missing. "Where is Dad?" I asked, already imagining the answer. Mama lowered her eyes, sadness returning to her face. "Died a few months ago. Liver couldn't take it, drank till the end." I felt a pang in the chest. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't relief. It was just a realization that some stories end without us having the chance to fix everything. "He asked about you a few times," Mama continued, voice low. "In the last days, when he was already very sick, called your name. Think he regretted his way." I said nothing. There were things time didn't completely cure, only taught to live with. We sat at the table. That table where so many times I had served food to my brothers. Mama prepared tea and put some biscuits on the plate. Charlotte stayed in my lap, nibbling a biscuit and making a mess. "She is beautiful," Mama said with a wet smile. "Looks like you when you were little." "She is my life, Mom. Everything I went through was worth it because of her." "And her father?" she asked somewhat hesitantly. "Vanished? Never appeared again." "But he isn't missed. We are fine, me and her, and we have a good family taking care of us." Mama held my hand over the table. "You became strong, my daughter, stronger than I ever was. I look at you and see a real woman, a real mother. I am proud of you." Those words entered my heart and healed what was still left to heal. My mother was proud of me. After everything, she saw worth in me. We spent the whole afternoon there talking, laughing, remembering. Chloe held Charlotte in her lap and sang to her, and my daughter smiled in that toothless way that melted my heart. When the sun began to go down, I said goodbye, promised I would return more times, that I wouldn't let so much time pass again. And this time, it was a promise I knew I would keep. On the way back, with Charlotte sleeping in my lap and Mr. Joseph guiding the wagon in silence, I looked back one last time, saw that house getting small in the distance, disappearing in the curve of the road, and realized I had made peace, not only with my family, but with myself, with the girl I was, with the woman I became, with everything I lived. Life had broken me, but I had put the pieces together in a new way and was stronger than before. It was a common afternoon. I was on the porch finishing an ordered dress when I heard the creaking of a wagon stopping in front of the house. It wasn't uncommon. Many people passed by there, but something inside me moved. A weird feeling. I raised my eyes from the sewing and saw a man getting down, taking off his hat, and my heart stopped. It was him. It was Jacob. I stood there paralyzed, with needle in hand and fabric in lap. He had changed, was older, more sunburnt, with some wrinkles he didn't have before, but it was him. That smile, those eyes, that way. He saw me and stood still too, holding his hat with both hands, as he used to do back in the day when he was nervous. "Sophia," he said, voice coming out kind of hoarse. "Sophia, it's me." I put the sewing aside slowly. My head was spinning, trying to process that he was there in front of me. After so long, I got up, wiped my hands on my apron, and went down the porch steps. "Jacob," I replied, trying to keep my voice firm. He took a few steps in my direction, but stopped when he saw I didn't move. I heard you were here." It took a while, but the news reached me. I looked at him, and for a moment, I searched for the boy I had fallen in love with. But that boy no longer existed, and the girl who loved him didn't either. In front of me was just a stranger, with his hat in his hand and excuses in his mouth. My heart, which years ago would have galloped wildly, now beat with a calmness that surprised even me. "I heard that you had a girl," he stammered, "and that you were living with the couple here on the farm." "It took a while indeed," I said, and there was a coldness in my voice that I myself was surprised by. "It's been a long time already." He lowered his head ashamed. I know I took too long, but let me explain, Sophia. I traveled far, went way distant to take that load. When I returned, you had vanished. Your father said you had run away with another man, that you had cheated on me." I felt anger rise, but it was a cold, controlled anger. "And you believed it?" "I was confused, Sophia. I came back looking for you, but your father," he looked me in the eye and swore you had run off with another man. "He said you made a fool of me. I was young, stupid, and wounded. I didn't know who to believe, so I ran." It sounds like a flimsy excuse, doesn't it, my dears? Because that is exactly what it is. Youth is often the shield that cowards use to hide their lack of backbone. He chose to believe a lie simply because it was easier than fighting for the truth. "You were young?" I repeated, feeling the bitter taste of those words. I was too. I was also confused, scared, but I didn't run away. I stayed waiting for you until I couldn't wait anymore. That was when Charlotte appeared running from the yard, with her little dress dirty with dirt, hair disheveled, shouting excitedly, "Mom, Mom, look at the butterfly I caught." She stopped suddenly upon seeing the strange man standing there. She stayed kind of hidden behind me, curious but shy. Jacob looked at her, and his eyes filled with water. I saw him swallow hard, emotion taking over. "Is it her?" he asked, voice trembling. "Is she my daughter?" Charlotte looked at me confused. "Mom, who is this man?" I squatted to her height, held her little shoulders with affection. "He is an acquaintance of Mommy's, my love. Go play a little more while I talk to him, okay?" She ran off again, already forgetting the butterfly, looking for another adventure. Jacob stood watching her move away, tears rolling down his sunburnt face. "She is beautiful," he said. "Looks like you." "She is my life," I replied firmly. "My reason to wake up every day and fight." He came closer, extending his hand as if he wanted to touch my arm. But I took a step back. "Sophia, I came here because I want to fix things. I want to acknowledge the girl as mine. I want to marry you like I promised. I made a mistake. I took too long. I know. But I am here now. We can start over." This is the confrontation we have all been waiting for. And Jacob's assumption that he can simply walk back into her life shows how little he understands the woman she has become. Listen carefully to her response, because it is one of the most powerful definitions of self-worth you will ever hear. I looked at him, really looked. Saw the man who one day made me dream, who promised me a future, who awakened hopes in me that later became a nightmare. But do you know what I felt, my dear? Nothing. Neither love, nor hate, nor grudge. Just a quiet emptiness, like when we look at something that is no longer part of our life. "She already has a father," I spoke calmly. "Has a real father who stayed, who held her in his lap when she was born, who taught her to walk, who makes her laugh. A father isn't the one who makes the child, Jacob. It's the one who raises her, who stays, who loves every day. But I am her blood father." "Blood?" I gave a humorless laugh. "Blood means nothing if it doesn't come with presents. Mr. Joseph is her father in everything that matters. He chose to be. You had the chance and let it pass." Jacob seemed to be stabbed with every word, but I needed to say it, needed him to understand. "And about marrying me?" I continued, voice getting stronger. "You are looking for the girl you left on the porch, Jacob, the girl who needed you to breathe. But that girl died in the rain the day you didn't come back. The woman standing in front of you isn't broken, and she certainly isn't waiting to be fixed by a marriage license." I stepped closer, my voice dropping to a whisper that hit harder than a scream. "You offered me a promise. Mr. Joseph gave me a life. He changed her diapers. He walked the floor when she had a fever. He loved us when we were nothing but shame to the world. You want to give her your name to clear your conscience? Keep it. She has a father, and I have a soul that is finally whole." I didn't just save myself, Jacob. I built a cathedral out of the stones you all threw at me. Go home. He stood there, hat crumpled in hands, shoulders slumped. So, you don't forgive me? I breathed deep, feeling a peace coming from somewhere deep inside me. I forgive you, yes. I forgive because holding a grudge only hurts the one holding it. But forgiving doesn't mean accepting back. Forgiving doesn't mean pretending nothing happened. You went on with your life, Jacob. Now let me go on with mine. Sarah had appeared at the door, watching from afar, ready to intervene if needed. But she saw in my manner, in my posture, that I was handling it, that I was whole, strong, decided. Jacob put the hat back on his head, defeated. I understand. I think I expected you were still waiting for me, but I see you aren't waiting for anyone anymore. Not really, I confirmed. I am living, and there is a huge difference between those two things. He nodded, turned to leave, but stopped and looked back one more time. She will know. Charlotte, one day she will know I am her father. When she is old enough to understand, I will tell the truth, without lies, without embellishing, and then she will decide what she wants to do with that information. But I won't force anything. She deserves to know her story, but isn't obliged to carry who wasn't present. He climbed onto the wagon and left. I stood there, watching him vanish in the curve of the road, the same way he had vanished so many years ago, but this time it was different. This time who was sending him away was me, and it was liberating. And to the women listening to me now, if you are waiting for someone to come back and save you, please stop. Closing the door on the past yourself is not an ending. It is the moment you truly begin to own your life. Your freedom lies right there, in that very decision. Sarah came to me and held my hand. You were brave, my daughter, and said exactly what needed to be said. Learned from you, I replied, squeezing her hand. Learned that we don't need to accept crumbs when we deserve the whole loaf. Charlotte came back running, jumped into my lap. Did the man go away already? Yes, my daughter. Good. I didn't like him much. Prefer Daddy Joseph. I hugged my daughter, smelling the scent of earth and sun in her hair, and smiled. She was right. We didn't need anyone else. Our family was already complete. And so, my dear, the years passed. Charlotte grew strong and healthy, full of life and dreams. Studied at the village school, learned to read and write, and was always a curious girl, one of those who ask why about everything. Mr. Joseph took her to the fields sometimes, taught about plants, animals, the land, and she followed him like a duckling follows the mother, calling him Dad with so much love that quiet man melted like butter. Sarah taught her everything she knew about keeping house, making bread, embroidering, and I taught her to sew. We passed whole afternoons on the porch, the 3 generations there, needle and thread in hands, talking about life, about dreams, about everything. When Charlotte got older, already a young lady, I sat with her one Sunday afternoon and told the whole story. Told about Jacob, about how I was abandoned, about how Sarah and Mr. Joseph saved me. She listened in silence, holding my hand, and when I finished, she cried. But it wasn't a cry of sadness, it was of pride. You are the strongest woman I know, Mom, she said, hugging me. And I am lucky to be your daughter. And I am lucky to be your mother, I replied, kissing her forehead. She never wanted to look for Jacob. Said father was who raised, not who vanished. And when Mr. Joseph fell ill, she stayed by his side day and night, caring, keeping company, holding his hand until the last breath. And in that moment, my dear, I saw that real love has nothing to do with blood. It has to do with presence, with choice, with all the small days we lived together. Mr. Joseph left on an autumn day when the leaves were yellow and the wind blew soft. He died sleeping without pain, with all of us around. And when they closed his coffin, I saw Charlotte place a flower on top and whisper, "Thank you for being my real father." Sarah became quieter after he was gone. The house seemed bigger, emptier, even with us there. But she remained strong, the way she always was. And when her time came too, some years later, she left sleeping in the rocking chair, rosary in hand and a smile on her face, as if she knew she was going to meet Joseph on the other side. Today, sitting here in my chair, with hair all white and body tired from living so much, I look back and see how far I walked. I see the scared girl I was, the mother I became, the grandmother I am now, because yes, my dear, Charlotte gave me grandchildren, 3 beautiful little creatures that fill my house with mess and joy. And when I look at them running through the yard, laughing, playing, so innocent and full of life, I give thanks. I give thanks for having been abandoned on that road, because if not for that, I never would have found my true family. I give thanks for the pain, because it was what taught me to be strong. I give thanks for the tears, because they watered the garden my life became. This house where I live now is the same one Sarah and Mr. Joseph welcomed me into. They left it to me, said it was mine, that it was always mine since the day I arrived soaked and lost. And here I raised my daughter. Here I sewed thousands of clothes. Here I built my story. There are people who ask me if I regret anything. If I regret trusting Jacob, getting pregnant so young, wasting so much time suffering. And I answer always the same thing. I regret nothing, because everything, absolutely everything I lived, brought me here. And here is a good place. Here is a place of peace. Sometimes I still think of my father, not with anger, not with grudge, only with a soft sadness of someone who knows he lost a lot because of his pride. He lost the chance to know his granddaughter, to see me grow, to be part of my life. And that, my dear, is the worst of punishments, not the one we give, but the one the person gives themselves. Mama lived until she was very old. In the last years, she came to visit me frequently, and we sat here on this same porch, drinking chamomile tea, talking about everything and about nothing. She asked forgiveness sometimes, even me saying I had already forgiven. I think she never forgave herself for not defending me more, but I understood. Everyone does what they can with the strength they have. When she passed, I cried. I cried not for what wasn't, but for what we managed to build after. For the forgiveness, for the peace, for the love that bloomed even in the midst of so many thorns. Sitting in my old rocking chair, I gaze out at the vibrant garden before my porch, a place that was once nothing but barren, dry earth. My life mirrors this garden. It began in the muddy mire of a storm when I was just 15. My father thought that rain would drown me, washing me away, but he was wrong. The mud and the fury of the storm did not destroy me. Instead, they became the fertile soil for the seeds of my resilience to take root. I am no longer that trembling weed by the roadside. I have grown into a sturdy old oak, casting a peaceful shade that shelters my own saplings from whatever storms may come. If this story of rebirth from the storm touched your heart, please hit subscribe so we can spread more hope and belief in life together.